Welcome back for another episode of EIF Asks MEPs, a series of interviews with political members of the European Internet Forum on digital policy issues they're working on. Today I'm with Dragos Tudorache, MEP and Vice Chair of the Renew Europe group from Romania, who will answer questions about artificial intelligence and transatlantic cooperation. Welcome, Dragos.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Dragos, you've been working extensively on artificial intelligence as rapporteur on the AI Act in the LIBE Committee, as chair of the Special Committee on Artificial Intelligence in the Digital Age, and you're also a member of the delegation of the European Parliament for relations with the United States. So my question to you is, where and how do you think that the EU and the US should work closer together to achieve convergence on AI? And perhaps other frontier technologies? And what about also coordination with other like-minded partners?
I think you've said the key word here, which is convergence. And in fact, from the very start of this mandate, from the start of the mandate of the Special Committee, AIDA, on artificial intelligence, we've tried, and I have personally pushed very much for this convergence between the EU and the US, for the very simple reason that I think we share values, we share the same fundamental principles that we believe should be driving this technological revolution that we all go through. And therefore, if we believe that, and if we base ourselves on the same values, then we should also strive to write the rules together, or to try to converge towards signposting, towards writing the rules for the digital world of tomorrow. As we know, the devil is in the details. And the question is, okay, how do we achieve, in fact, convergence? What does that mean in practice? And the reality is that since we've started discussing, since we started this dialogue also at the level of legislators, because I've actually talked with quite a number of legislators on the US side, congressmen and women, it became apparent quite quickly that on the US Congress side, there won't be at the same time as we here on the European side pushing legislation, there won't be an equivalent legislation on the US side.
You have already mentioned standards, and of course international standards are essential. How, in your view, can the EU create international standards that address harmful uses of AI without undermining the general AI technologies, perhaps including also open source tools?
Mm-hmm. Well, again, we'll need to, this time around with the AI Act, we'll need to be much more anchored than I think we were with previous legislation, much more anchored in the reality. The current Commission proposal is that where standards do not exist, the Commission will be providing common specifications. I personally don't believe that such standards should come top-down. I actually believe in a bottom-up approach for preparing these standards, which is in a way an approach that is being used in the US. So I think this is where we can maybe learn from our transatlantic partner and also strive to work with similar, as much as possible, with similar approaches, similar methodologies in preparing these standards, because, I won't repeat what I said earlier, because we have a shared interest to have standards aligned.
And again, remaining on international standards, what is your view on the AI Act demarcation between international standards and common specifications?
Well, it's linked to what I was saying earlier. The initial Commission proposal came with this concept of common specifications, assuming the fact that there aren't standards available. And it's true that probably in many, because this is new legislation in an area that hasn't been regulated before, it is very likely that actually many of these aspects will not be covered by existing standards. The way we'll write these standards will be through common specifications prepared by the Commission. I believe in standards that have the value and are written in the methodology of standards, European, international. Again, ideally they should be aligned, or if they are not aligned, we should be starting and using our methodology and our work to then turn our European horizontal standards into international standards covering those requirements of AI that are relevant for us.
Let's zoom in on the EU for a moment. What are, in your view, the potential solutions to avoid market fragmentation and avoid ending up having 27 different applications of the AI regulation in Europe? What is the best way to ensure the uniform implementation in the member states?
I actually think this is key. And I consider this to be one of the main achievements of this text if we manage to convince also our co-legislator when the trilogues will start of this need for coherence. I think that if we are to achieve an objective that otherwise is stated at every level, and I heard governments stating this objective, the Commission stating this objective, and certainly we in Parliament have put this objective forward, which is to strengthen the digital single market, to allow companies to grow competitive, whether big or small, and use the potential of the digital single market. Well, I happen to believe you can't do that with the current logic of governance that the Commission has proposed in its text. Why? Because, exactly as you said, it is a logic where you will end up having 27 different national regulators that will try to apply the same rules. I think we need a centralized governance, a governance that ensures coherence of enforcement of the rules, and that does it also alongside the stakeholders. So I'm also proposing, as part of the negotiations, an advisory forum for this European board and this European AI Center that will act as this sort of a reality check for the decision makers to make sure that that reality is present in decisions and in the way this text will be adapted. Let's not forget that the fundamental element of this legislation is its adaptability to the future. When you try to regulate horizontally a technology that is constantly leaping forward, if you don't have this adaptability built in, it's going to remain obsolete by the time we'll adopt it.
Very clear. You have mentioned the trialogue and the negotiations. So the European Parliament work on the AI Act is in progress. In your view, what are the main political issues that the Parliament is dealing with on this specific file, and what are some of the likely landing zones?
Maybe it's too early to announce landing zones because we are still early in the discussions. But the big political debates we're going to have on the scope, and when I say scope, I mean both the definition in the way we're going to actually agree the definition, also in the way we will be covering general purpose AI in the text. I personally believe that there is a landing zone possible, speaking of possible landing zones, somewhere where I think we also look at existing definitions at a more international level. Another big political debate will be on the prohibited applications and the high-risk applications, so Article 5 and Annex 3. So ideologically there are political groups that are looking for a broader set of prohibited practices, others who look for a narrower set of prohibited practices, and the same thing for Annex 3. As a liberal politician, I'm also believing in as little burdens as possible, in finding ways to achieve compliance without hampering, and particularly without affecting the small and medium-sized enterprises, which we know are at the heart of our European economy, and for whom the cost of compliance is usually the highest. So we need to be very mindful of their interests. We need to be mindful of the fact that, again, AI is there to drive us forward, not to drive us backwards. So at least the approach that I'm going to take in addressing these ideological debates is, again, to make sure that we are finding that right balance between protecting our citizens' interests, which remains the whole human-centric approach is about that, but at the same time make it also innovation-centric, because I am convinced that without that we're not going to achieve the objectives of this text.
Dragos, thank you very much for taking the time. I wish you the best success with the AI Act. And this concludes our EIF Asks MEP's interview with MEP Dragos Tudorache. Don't miss the next episodes. Follow us on our social channels at the European Internet Forum.